Whoa! Ah! Ah! Oh! Oh!
His little glider thing up, got all caught up in his propeller. Started hollering, he pulled his parachute out. He was tumbling down, going all ways. He was in a right old state. He's been over here for an hour or so. God, he was in a jam, Dad, wasn't he?
He was hearing him screaming, like a pig he was.
Round and round and round he was going. Look, he's coming down, he's landing Ant's farm.
I don't think he's got no control over where he lands. He's going to end up in the
He's coming down with some speed, you know.
Look at his little legs going. Look at him.
He's in a bad way. God, he was hollering.
Well, this is what happens when you have a big collapse at full speed. 1500 feet. That proper it's all tangled in there. Wing went behind me. That's what reserve looks like. You haven't seen one already. Jeez. Well, I think that might be my competition over, to be honest. Because I'm pretty sure that's chewed in some lines. Man, that was definitely been the worst landing I've ever had, and in a crop field as well. This is Saturday the 22nd of July, the day after the accident, and I thought rather than hold on for too long I would make a video, answer a lot of questions that people have had about it, and put my opinion forward, and also what's happened today. I've been flying again today, and what's been going through my head there. So as you've just seen, I was flying on speed bar and took a big collapse on the left side, and very aggressively rotated me over to the right. I then fell into the wing, and then pulled my reserve thereafter. Yeah, not an experience I want to really relive, but today I want to talk about why it happened, what I would have done differently if anything, and yeah, answer those questions. So here's the background of the flight. I was on a competition task. We were allowed 3 hours of flight hours within a 5-hour window from 7 AM to 12 PM. I'd been flying for 2 hours already. I'd completed 2 tasks. I was then on my way back to the airfield, and I had an hour left of spare time, so I elected to collect a few more turn points on my way home. And it was only going to be about 30 minutes flight on speed bar / fast trim anyway, so I had plenty of time. There was no need to really rush, but in a competition position where, you know, collecting, you have to maximize your time versus points. Speed bar is the option to be taking and collecting as many points as you can. So the collapse occurred at 10:40. Just outside of Dover, where the terrain is higher from the west of where I came from, where I thought it was rougher air at the time. I felt that it was absolutely fine, but in the video, as you can see, and I don't remember doing this at all, I'm looking up at my left wingtip. I look up twice, and after the second look, well, as you've just seen, things unfolded for the worst. I think, you know, looking back at that, I was obviously aware that something was happening, and that should have really been my indication to come off of speed bar and slow things down. But like I say, I literally have no memory of looking at that tip before any of this happening. I do quite vividly remember looking at the ground as I was in a dive, and then after that I remember my hand grabbing my reserve and then thinking, this is not opening, and my head was just, because how the risers had twisted, So as it collapsed and went to the right hand side, the risers had twisted my head, so my head was pinned downwards. So I couldn't see my reserve, I could not see anything that was going on. I know that my wing was chewed into my engine because of those risers being pulled behind my head. But I luckily had my hands free, as you see in the video. I fell straight into the wing again on that second rotation over. You can see my hand go into the wing as well. It's a good job that the lines didn't pull my hand then thereafter this way, because my reserve is mounted on my side. So it could have ended a lot worse in many situations. I managed to reach down for my handle first time and grabbed it, and I just pulled outright and let it go. Someone asked me, did I throw to blue with your head pinned down like that, and I have no idea what happened thereafter. It was just praying that everything was going to be okay. Yeah, so after that reserve opened and I was coming down with a head cam, I was obviously finished. What you've seen is everything I've got. All I could see was a house, and I was just drifting closer and closer to this house. And an important point to be made from that is that something that we've discussed here is that a lot of the time you think, oh, I can glide to that field there and this field here if you have any engine problems, but not a lot of the time enters into your mind, unless you're like, for example, I do this when I go and practice more acrobatic tricks. I think if I have to throw a reserve, I'm coming downwind back to where I've taken off, where there's going to be people. But when you're normally flying cross country, you don't generally tend to think about, if you have to pull a reserve, where it's going to drift you to. I have a very good sense of where the wind direction is coming from, because I do a lot of cross country planning, as many of you probably know. But it doesn't really generally enter my mind that I'm going to take such a big collapse that it's going to need to be a reserve throw. However, on that descent down, a big red canopy amazingly alerts a lot of local people. So as I hit the deck, and I think there was people there within must have been a couple of minutes, if that. There was already two guys there. I think that's where the head cam's footage restarted. Just kind of took my helmet off and restarted that just to capture what was going on, just as more of a how am I going to process this type thing. So yeah, they managed to pick me up, and I think at the time I was thinking, oh my god, I can't get out of this, because I had a mat board over my knees and that was pressing on my legs, and I was cocked over to the side. I think maybe with a little bit of rest and I may be able to get myself up, but at the time I just didn't feel capable of that movement. Also, your adrenaline is going, you don't know what injuries you've sustained, of which at the moment it seems like I've walked away without a scratch, which is absolutely incredible from how dynamic that was. However, the important thing was I had a reasonable amount of height to play with. So I'll go into more details of that in a second. It's been just over a week now, and I've had some serious time to replay the moment over and over in my head and look very analytically at why this happened. So having also spoken to more experienced pilots on the day, the consensus is that I was flying in a shear layer where two air masses were mixing. We had a 10 km/h northwesterly wind, and by the time I was down near Dover on the south coast of Kent, the sea breeze had started to pull in. I was 3 kilometres inland from the coast where the collapse occurred. The mixing air masses combined with the rising thermic air, and the difference in terrain height emphasising the funneling of the air currents, seemingly created a washing machine of turbulent air. Simply put, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, doing the wrong thing. During this analysis, I'm going to leave in some of the pre-accident comments I'm making, just to give absolute transparency of what happened on the day. On the south coast of Kent, marvellous day, some cumulus clouds, quite thermic over this bit over here. Not really sure why there and nowhere else really, but yeah, it's a little cloud street starting to form. We're pretty much on level with them. Just a bit below, if anything. These cumulus clouds were forming over the high terrain from where I was flying into before starting my second task. This was my first visual indicator that things were starting to build up. Clouds just in front of me is a thermic section of Kent over here. Obviously I thought there was going to be some decent lifty thermals in this area. A bit too far away to come for the pure economy though, I would have thought. All we've got here is this Folkestone. Yeah, it will be. This is the Eurotunnel. This is Folkestone. There you go. If you want to go over to France, then this is where you catch the train. You sit in this bit, the circling bit over here with the service station in the middle. And you get on your trains here, and then shoop, off they go. As you can hear, I'm not really concerned by the thermic activity, as I feel like I've got quite a high tolerance to turbulence from flying a lot of cross countries. Also note, I'm just below cloud base and not on speed bar because I'm still on a straight leg of a constant speed task. Here's more signals that the air is becoming rougher. Little clouds starting to form. It's gonna be a bumpy ride! And this is probably the most embarrassing piece of video for me. I'm joking about how bumpy it's going to be. I'm on speed bar, heading directly over a town, poor housekeeping because my main brake handler's loose, and just totally naive about how serious the conditions were becoming. Yep, I wasn't wrong. It swung in bumpy over this town. We aren't even downwind of it yet. Christ. And there we go, confirmation from my own words that it's rough and flying directly over a town. Still on speed bar. Now it's becoming an issue of complacency. This is Dover. Lovely, lovely Dover. Look at that blue sea. Must be because it goes over to France. You could see France yesterday, but today visibility isn't quite as good. I'm still chatting away about the scenery, so I'm clearly not concerned by the implications of flying over a big thermal trigger point. Oh, now we're downwind of it, we get to big, fat, dirty, stinking base. Let's go! Woo! And another embarrassing moment, I'm in full knowledge of the increasing conditions, yet I'm still pressing forward blindly. You can see how much I'm moving around in this shot. Some of this is due to me fidgeting to see where I'm going, but it also will be the rough air. Again, obviously not concerned by the conditions. Wonder who's going on holiday. Holiday! There's a couple of ships coming in. Boom, boom, 1, 2. Lovely, lovely. So as we approach the accident, this is the first of 2 looks at my left wingtip. So obviously I knew something was going on, and you can see a cumulus cloud forming just off to my left. Where there's lift, there's sink. Whoa! In this shot you can see my brakes are fully parked, so I've got no chance of a correction input. Not that it would be very effective at full trim, and it may have caused more issues. In the manual it states you can't use your main brakes when you're fully trimmed out, and also note the distance from the town and where the wind was driving the thermals towards my location. I then proceed to rotate 3 times, twisting my risers behind my head, at which point the glider seemingly re-inflates and I'm now swinging through. A potential brake input here may have made the difference, but I'm already along for the ride at this point because I've got no chance of any potential inputs. There's a couple of scary shots coming up here, and the first one any further up in the glider and it would have been a gift wrap situation. And in this one, as previously mentioned, if the lines had caught my arm, it would have pulled it against my head, leaving me with no arm to grab my reserve handle. As I was previously in free fall, you can see from my vario that I was falling at 16 meters a second, which is about the height of 1.5 standard UK houses every second. I'd already lost 500 feet from the initial collapse, starting at 1600 feet, now at 1088 feet. You can also hear the engine still running because I thought the first collapse might come free and hadn't had the foresight to kill the engine as things started going bad. This could have potentially saved me a lot of equipment damage. This is a first look at some of the damage the prop has caused as part of the upper cascade disappears into the distance. At this point, the wing is being chewed up, but partially reinflated. I'm also facing 180 degrees from the original direction of travel. Oh! I'm obviously still in a high rate of descent here, as the Vario is screaming at me, but from the logs it appears that the reserve started opening around 600 feet and was fully open by 500 feet. That's 1,100 feet from the initial collapse. Oh! And something you can't see from the footage is the fact that I've constantly got my left wingtip steering toggle engaged to fly straight, because my engine torques to the right. I do wonder if that was also a contributing factor to that side collapsing. Thermal sink, mixing air, speed bar, tip steer engaged. And if you haven't heard of the Swiss cheese model, this is pretty much an exact example. Well, this is how serious the reserve throw can actually be. Reserves there, and I was drifting this way, and as you can see we have a house and power lines, so this could have been a totally different story. I'm extremely lucky to be in a fit state to be making a video to show it off, because this could have been extremely worse. Ooh. So as these clips are playing of me inspecting my gear, I just wanted to go over what damages to my equipment I've sustained. As I've mentioned, personally I've walked away without scratch, but considering my prop chewed up my glider as I fell into it, there is a significant amount of damage. The glider has been sent over to the loft for repair. They've inspected it. They found 2 more panels than I did in this video footage. They found 18 panels that need either replacing, part replacing, or a patch, and then 10 lines that also need replacing. Full inspection and then back to me, and we're looking at upwards of £1,200, which is quite a significant amount of damage. Propeller is also damaged as well, so the replacement for that is around £300, and then I'm still yet to find out about my cage, as the top left cage quarter was damaged, every single spar, so all 4 spars was damaged, and the main chassis was also wedged over, so there's that as well. It's quite a significant amount of damage there. And then the engine's absolutely fine as well. I don't believe that the prop strike was a significant enough one to damage any bearings, and on general inspection that doesn't seem to have been the case. The engine ran after that fact for 3 tasks, so I'm fairly confident that that is in good condition. But I would say with everything together we're looking at probably about £2,000 worth of damage, around that figure anyway. Quite significant, but I've got to remember that I've still got my health, and that's the most important thing. I've been flying for 5 years, but I have pushed my flying ability and skill in various different ways to try and improve. That's, you know, that's just my mindset. That's where I like to be. But I feel like I haven't done it in an unsafe manner, and at no point before this occurrence did I feel like I was in any danger at any point. I had a lot of faith in the wing. You know, I've flown that wing for probably a good 100 hours now, over a lot of flights, as you know, some of them 10 hours long, so I feel comfortable under that wing. Yesterday I felt okay, didn't feel like I had any injuries or anything like that. Today is much the same. I feel physically okay. Yesterday, mentally wise, I felt absolutely fine. It was almost as if it hadn't happened at all, which is very strange. But today we had a spot landing task to do, so this is the first time that we'd flown. Yesterday I got back, we repaired all the kit and moved the engine over to a different frame, and I was up ready to fly for an economy task yesterday. It got cancelled in the end because of bad weather. So I think yesterday, had I have taken off and flown again straight away, I think this processing might have been easier. I don't know. But today when we took off for our spot landing, I was very nervous, quite tentative about layout and stuff. I do everything safely. I make sure I do all my checks. I'm very thorough with everything I do. And then after takeoff, just turning around and re-looking at the ground brought back it's just some really strong memories of being under a reserve and falling towards the earth, thinking, is this opening? Am I going to hit this house? And just in that moment, I think is when my brain actually started to process what had truly happened yesterday. Off we go. Oh, my heart is in my mouth right now. I got to height and then broke out in tears because that's a huge emotional release. I then, tried to clear my mind and was like, okay, we're on a spot task now. You've done this thousands of times. It's no different. Oh, here come the tears. It's okay, we got it. We fucking got it. We're safe. We're fine. We have confidence. It's fine. We got it. You can do this, Dan. You've done this 1,000 times. I was on a loaned wing from Lars from Germany. He's got exactly the same glider as I have, but it had the PK system enabled, which I've never used before personally. So it was ever so slightly different, but it's the same glider, so things shouldn't have really made a difference, but it's another different thing in your mind with your equipment. When you go out and fly, I always say never change anything more than once on a flight, always just change bit by bit if you're going to do anything different. But that was in the back of my mind, and I cleared and I had a really good spot landing. I hit the spot, brilliant. I kissed the ground as I got down, and then just broke into absolute floods of tears. And I think, then just the emotion came back through, and it's just, I think I'm going to have a rough week of processing what's actually just happened. So my final thoughts on the whole matter, and just some hindsight as well, is that I was extremely lucky. The point at where I landed, and the if you want to look at it on what 3 words, the landing point was brains spends fault. It was maybe 3 or 4 meters away from a fence, very like the edge of a crop field. There was also a power line above that fence, and then a building as well. So I was extremely lucky to land just shy of that. On the lead up to the competition, I'd spoken about getting getting a repack done for the British squad before the Worlds, just to make sure we're all safe, and if any situation that would occur, that we would have a reserve that was repacked and was going to open. And I've been meaning to get my reserve repacked and done for a couple of years, maybe a year. I've had it for 5 years, yeah, pretty much since I've been flying. I think I did about 60 hours before I got one, and then started to push the envelope before I... no, it must have been 30, because yeah, I entered my first comp with 30 hours, and yeah, so I did 30 hours of flying, and then I entered my first competition as a club pilot for the BHBA rankings, and I had to have a reserve for the competition. So yeah, I've had a reserve for 270, 300 hours now. So and never had to use it. But getting a repack was on one of my priority lists. I just always put it off and put it off and put it off. I was interested in repack days, but then it never really worked out. And looking back, I would definitely now have that as a service item 100% every single year, because it's just so cheap insurance to know that your reserve is packed well, and it's not perished, and it's going to open, and it's dry, and it's not rotted through. And yeah, I would definitely get a repack done. I think that pilots who aren't flying with reserve should give it strong consideration, because without that I would have been, yeah, either in hospital or much worse, and from not having really much canopy open at all because the wing had been chewed into the propeller, probably would have been a free fall situation, and at points I'm sure I was at free fall before the reserve opened. So yeah, my advice would be strongly consider getting reserve, and SIV if you're starting to push your limits is probably worth a lot of value. You know, it's not just the skills of going and doing SIV, it's the mindset of, if you need to throw a reserve, the time is now. And like I said earlier, there was no doubt in my mind that was the point. A reserve needs to be thrown. There was no, oh, I'm going to try and save this. It was, yes, we have to get this out now. And when you get one, and if you've got one, always practice where your handle is. Just touch the handle, so it becomes muscle memory to where it is. And I'm so glad that I've incorporated that into my everyday flying. Just practice it. It doesn't cost you anything at all, just to touch your reserve handle, just so you know, and your mind knows where. And when it's all gone to spaghetti and the shit is hitting the fan, you know exactly where it is.